Margaret Atwood probably needs no introduction, so I won't waste time there. I've looked through pretty much all the writing advice I could find from her, and I pulled out some quotes I thought were interesting and useful for us to talk about. Here's the first one. Number 1, hold the reader's attention. This is likely to work better if you can hold your own, but you don't know who the reader is, so it's like shooting fish with a slingshot in the dark. What fascinates A will bore the pants off B. I love the way she phrased this. It's almost like she's got away with words or something. But anyway, there's 2 things here to make a real point of remembering, if you can. Firstly, it's easier to hold the reader's attention if you can hold your own. Seems so simple when you look at it directly like this. But how often does this cross your mind as you're writing? Personally, my mind is full of all kinds of assessments when I'm writing. I'm trying to balance all kinds of requirements that I think I need to hit to write a good story. And it's rare that I sit back and simply ask myself, am I interested in my story? Do I like this? Would I read this? That's not to suggest I don't feel that way about my writing. At the moment I do, for the most part. I just rarely look at it in such a straightforward manner or make that a real priority. I think instead of worrying about them all individually, all those other considerations and worries can all be put in one big box called, does this hold the reader's attention? If it does, keep going. Ride the wave. The second part here that I think is worth taking note of is that she mentions that the reader's attention is like shooting fish with a slingshot in the dark. My interpretation of this, and it's only that, is that this process is extremely difficult, obviously, but almost to the point where it's not even really possible to be intentional about it. Of course, we have to keep our readers in mind all the time and make our stories at least somewhat legible. But I think if we focus on whether the story we're writing brings us joy as a writer or makes us feel something, beyond that, we're in the darkness with our slingshot. If we keep going, we will hit some fish, but trying to hit every single fish without any misses is impossible. So it doesn't really make sense to have our heart set on that. By the way, if you're new here, my name's Kieran. I'm a writer and a freelance editor, and I love helping writers tell their stories while having fun. So thanks for being here. Number 2, there's no free lunch. Writing is work, it's also gambling, you don't get a pension plan. Other people can help you a bit, but essentially you're on your own. Nobody's making you do this, you chose it, so don't whine. I'm going to steer away from talking about career authors and making a living from writing and all that stuff, partly because I've given my thoughts on that tons of times, but also because I want to narrow in on what she said at the end there. Nobody is making you do this, you chose it, so don't whine. Rarely do I make room for tougher writing advice on this channel, maybe I should, but I'm all for supporting writers and helping build their confidence. That's what I love to do, and everybody needs that sometimes. But what we also sometimes need is a little figurative shake, a little tactical jolt. This doesn't apply to all writers by any means, but occasionally I hear from writers who only talk about how hard writing is and how they want to quit and stop writing. Writing can be rough sometimes, obviously, we all know that. But if you spend all of your time thinking about how hard the writing is and don't really try making an actual effort with it, that's not a writing problem, that's a mindset problem. You simply don't get better at writing by lamenting its difficulties. You get better at writing by writing. That's about as harsh as I'll get on this channel. But if that sounds like you, do try and listen to me for a moment. If it's really hard right now and you want to get better at it, you have to gather up that energy to push past your mental barriers and do some writing. No amount of advice and reassurance from anybody else or any outside factor will get rid of that barrier. It's hard, but you can do it if you put the effort into the right place. You have to decide not to be beaten by it. Number 3, don't sit down in the middle of the woods. If you're lost in the plot or blocked, retrace your steps to where you went wrong and then take the other road, and or change the person, change the tense, change the opening page. I love this. I think this is great practical advice for storytelling. As much as we can plan stories ahead of time, some of us anyway, and we can envision what we want them to be, I've always found writing to feel a little bit like a road trip in some ways. You can look at maps and guidebooks and predict how things are going to be, but when you get there, the road almost always looks different to what you expected, even if it still leads you where you want to go. It's that concept of retracing your steps that I particularly like about Margaret Atwood's advice here. Often if we feel stuck, we freeze in place, making no progress, looking around for other ways to go, but always aiming to go forward because we think that forward means progress. But there's always one way you can go, and that's backwards. If your story lost its magic somewhere, if you left it on top of the pump the last time you stopped to fill up the car, then you can go back for it. If you can pick it up again, you might learn something about where you should have gone in the first place. A new route might open up without the need to spend so long deliberating and worrying about things. Learning that something doesn't work for your story is not satisfying or exciting in the same way as finding something that works straight away, but it is useful. Sometimes going backwards is actually the route to progress, so don't be afraid to do it. Number 4, pretend you're a reader. Start on the first page. Is it a good enough first page to hold your attention? Are you going to turn the page or not? If the answer is not, you need a different beginning. So revision means revision. You're seeing it anew. This one pulls together some of the concepts we've already talked about, keeping a reader's attention and making mistakes or missteps on your story. But it also adds that concept of revision, meaning a new vision for your story, which I think is really interesting. It made me stop and think. This is where I've had trouble in the past with novels, especially if I started self-editing them immediately after I finished writing the first draft. Doing that means I never really got out of that writing mode with the story. And while it's good to be accurate to what you originally envisioned your story to be, hindsight can be what brings you that revision, as she says. Taking a break from a piece of work and coming back to it when you've had time to get some distance can really help you to see it in a new light. I definitely recommend doing that. I know I get impatient to be done with a story too, but I've never regretted taking a break from a piece of work, but I have regretted not taking a break. The more specific advice here about reading the first page as a reader would is a great idea. I've got a couple of videos all about writing effective openings for your story, so if you're keen to do a bit of reflection on your first page, check those out. The thumbnails are on the screen. If you'd rather get someone else to assess your first pages though, I run an editing service through my website. I offer constructive, friendly feedback, whether you're a first-time writer or a seasoned pro, so check out my testimonials to see what writers have said about me. Or if you just need a bit of advice and you'd rather ask me a direct question and have me turn it into a video like this one, members of my Patreon can do exactly that with custom video requests. Plus, there's a bunch of other benefits to being a member too, like reading all my work and joining my new feedback circle to expand your writer network and get some thoughts on your writing. Check out both at the links below. Right, next tip. Number 5, a story needs a break in a pattern to get it going. If everything's perfect all the time, there isn't a story. This is another great bit of advice for storytelling and something to bear in mind when you're contemplating a new story. However, though my first interpretation here was about just that, getting a new story going, I don't think Margaret Atwood means just the beginning of your story. I think she means at any point in your story, really. I often hear the term inciting incident when discussing novel writing, the moment that sends your character on their hero's journey. And while I don't really go in for formulas and structures like that much in my own writing, I think this is a similar concept. There must be a disruption to your character's life. Something has to happen, something has to go wrong. Whether that's just at the very beginning or it's many times over throughout the course of your book, I think it's just as useful. So if you're a little stuck and you're not sure where to go with your story, it could be useful to think about how you can break a pattern within it. What patterns are there in your story? I think sometimes you can feel them as you're writing, as everything starts to feel a bit too consistent and calm. Something important to bear in mind though is that a racehorse crashing through the window or some other seemingly random event, while sure to break the pattern, could feel like a bit of a cheat. Randomness in your plot generally leads to your reader not quite trusting you as much. It's hard to be invested in something if the rules keep changing and nothing's ever constant, unless your entire approach to your book is just creating intentional chaos. Instead, I'd look inside your character for what might break the pattern for you. How do they feel? What are they expecting? What do they want to avoid? What can they just not keep from doing? What ideas have they had? If you can find a change of pattern that's rooted in your character, that'll probably feel more established and earned to a reader, and you won't be risking them giving up on you and throwing your book out the window. Number 6, be aware of smaller publishers should the bigger ones not see the glory of your ways. They may want you and need you. Go with the one who loves you, not the one with the biggest gold buttons. I love this. It speaks my language. I'll try not to go on and on about the problems with traditional publishing, again, because I don't want to focus on negativity here. Instead, let's look at the positive message within this advice. Small presses exist. They're working hard, they're taking on work that they're passionate about, and they're not driven by shareholders baying for returns on their investment. They're just publishing stories that they love. I love to hear about talented people doing things themselves, building things up, telling stories, putting stories out there, creating and facilitating art and generally adding something to the world. That's why I do what I do with this channel. So to me, a small publisher sounds like a great idea. I'd go so far as to say skip the big ones completely. All that glitters isn't gold. Maybe it used to be. I might not be looking at traditional publishing for my own work, not anymore maybe, but I don't even know if I'd class small publishers in the same way as I would large ones. I'm not sure, but I think I definitely consider a small press. Not that they're exactly beating down the door to get to me. Whatever the case, I honestly believe that finding people who are truly passionate about more than just the possible money they'll make from your story, and instead really value the message behind it or the artistry behind it, is a great goal for any writer to have. There's not enough of that in the world lately, in my opinion. What there is enough of is random YouTube videos you could be watching next. Look at them all, filling up all your recommendations, overwhelming. Let me make it easier for you. Here's a playlist of all my writing advice from famous authors' videos. Have a look through it for more videos like this. Your favourite author might even be there. So thanks so much for watching, as always, and happy writing.